Welcome to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Steve Stein, who's a mental health professional that's been doing this for over 30 years helping families. Thanks so much for being here, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. I'm
Absolutely.
really glad to be here.
So I read that article that you wrote a while back for the Washington Parent
Yes.
about emotional thermometers.
Yes.
It is a fantastic theory, I have to tell you.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I'd never thought of that, but maybe you can explain a little bit more about this theory.
It's really a tool more than a theory. I wouldn't call it a theory, but thank you for so naming. It comes from, I've been a patient of physical therapy.
Okay.
So in pain management, they famously talk about your level of pain from 1 to 10. So all I did was extract that concept into emotionality. So I put emotions on a level of 1 to 10 as well. And so it's a tool for parent-child,
Right.
and it's a tool for people in general. So I want people to really appreciate where it's good, safe talk, meaning that I can clearly be understood by you, you can clearly be understood by me. And so where that falls on the thermometer is it's a low level of emotionality. So it falls at 1 to 3 on this 1 to 10 scale. And then going up from there is 4 to 7. So 4 to 7 is the emotions are not necessarily calm. They're stirred. Mm-hmm. But they're stirred importantly. So the 4 to 7 range of the thermometer is really a slippery slope. Because when my emotions are stirred, should you say to me something that's offensive, unintentional, but nevertheless I take it offensively, because my emotions are stirred, what do you mean by that? Might be my response. And you might say, well, what do you mean, what do you mean? So we're then at this
We start to escalate.
point. Yeah, we start to escalate. And where the emotional thermometer is, ideally we all should avoid, is the 8, 9, 10 level on this 1 to 10 scale. Because it's at that point that in a child, that's the temper tantrum. In an adult, that's just really ferocious emotions that potentially are just all out of hand. And so that's really a danger zone. We don't want people to be at that level. And so if I'm in a conversation and somebody has just really risen to this shouting level,
Right.
then what I know that I need to do is to retreat, because where I will end up is at an 8 meeting an 8 level of emotionality, and we're in a very high conflict battle at that point. And it gets regrettable. If we're transacting at that level of emotionality, we're in trouble. The relationship is in trouble.
No, that makes sense, and obviously, especially with a child, like my son always says to me, well, the good thing about you is, you get mad, you let it out, but then you're done. But it takes him longer. He needs to go, take a time out, kind of calm down, and later talk about it. And you say that actually in your article, that it's okay to let the child go to their room and take a time out, essentially. Now, not that you're punishing them, but you're giving them time to calm down.
And in so doing, we're giving ourselves time to calm down. Because when I'm mad at my child for whatever the transgression might have been, lying to me or not doing something that I thought he did or she did, I'm upset.
Right.
And so I'm at a level 7. And then if I approach him from this agitated state, and then he goes into defiance, I didn't do that, why are you saying that I did that? Then we've both escalated.
Oh yeah, I ramp up at that point.
There really is such a thing as a parental timeout as well,
Right.
as an efficient, effective way to bring calmer heads need to prevail. So one of us in the dialogue needs to have the common sense, let's say, to cool down.
Right.
And so if I require a cool down, I take a cool down, I give you the opportunity to cool down. And you might be someone who really wants it resolved here and now.
Yeah, pretty much.
But that's because I'm your friend, and,
Right.
and I understand that. If I can't at that point because I'm at this agitated level of a 7 near the breaking point of an 8 or 9, I have to retreat because I have to regain composure.
Right.
So that we can talk. And then in all due respect, what I would like to do, what I should do, is to ask you to let's talk later. But later has to be well defined. If you're a resolver, later has to be well defined. Well, when?
Right. I mean, 2 days I think is way too long, right? So somewhere
2 days is way too long.
Okay.
So let's meet in an hour. Let's meet
see.
at the so a couple says let's meet at the kitchen table in an hour.
I see. Okay.
What are you going to do in the meantime? Well, I'm going to calm down. Well, how are you going to do that? There's lots of ways.
How do you calm down?
Well, there's lots of ways. First of all, when it's overheating between me, my spouse, when it's overheating between me, my child, when it's overheating between anybody, space is critically important. Okay. So we have to give each other space because calming down it's a job for one. Only one can calm oneself down.
Makes sense.
And so that requires space. And then to really gain composure, one might use deep breathing. Deep breathing is a real effective way of bringing composure to a stressed out body, so to speak. There's lots of ways. People run to work it out, so to speak. People do really any number of things. Water is a really effective cooler down element. So we drink cold water, we throw cold water on ourselves, we bathe to calm down, we shower to calm down. We just let the water really have that calming element, and we put our head focused on calming down. That's what I need to do.
That's so funny because I do often tell my son, I'm like, I'm going to go take a shower right now. I didn't even think that that's what I was really doing, but I'm taking myself out of this whole situation. I know that he's not going to bust into the bathroom.
Right.
And I kind of actually visualize the water washing away all of the emotions.
That's a wonderful image. And that's what you image. That's what you think about as this water is cleansing. Cleaning, refreshing. Really, it's refreshing.
No, that makes perfect sense. So the biggest challenge I think some people have is I really do like to talk things through, and especially with a child, how do you know when they're ready to talk? Because I know that trying to force a conversation when he's not ready, it's not going to happen.
Okay, that's a really good point. So we ask the question, can we talk now?
Oh.
The grouchy kid says, no, not now. I'm still mad. So it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to have dinner around 6. How about if we talk right before dinner or right after dinner? Which would you prefer? So I'm always, instead of dictating, we're going to talk at such and such because we have to resolve this. I try to refrain from doing that.
Okay.
And allow for choice. We're going to talk. There's no if or but about that.
Right.
We can talk before dinner. We can talk after dinner. What would you prefer?
So it's about choices.
Yeah. So I give my child. I allow my child to choose, and it's helpful.
Okay. No, that definitely makes sense. What would you say are the most common challenges you find between the parent-child dynamic?
Today?
Yeah, today.
Oh, gosh. So common, really so common, is there's this general term that didn't exist in my childhood. It was the TV. But today there's so many screen elements or screen components, whether it's our telephones with a screen or the iPad with a phone with a screen. So it's what I find parents most frustrated with is the regulation of screens, because the screen interferes with family life.
Right.
I'll be there in just a few minutes, and then a few minutes turns into 20 minutes, and so we find that each sex, each gender tends to be attached to screens a little bit differently. So I'm just generalizing now, and I'm going to stereotype. But boys tend to be attached to screens through all the video gaming.
Okay.
The young girls are equally attached to screens, but women, being the more conversational sex historically, or traditionally, stereotypically, let's say, compared to men, are communicative more so than we attribute to men. So the young girls are attached to screens because they're just texting one after another, and they're texting during dinner, and they're texting like all the time.
Right.
So parents are so frustrated with non-regulated screen time and getting the kids detached from the screen. So, I mean, parents make rules, which you have to do today.
Right.
No phones at the dinner table, no answering it, even if it rings, put it over there. I've known parents that it's sort of like in the old Wild West where you couldn't go into Dodge City wearing a gun. So the analogy is I've known parents that make their kids turn in their screen, their phone, whatever, before bedtime, because I've sent you up to bed and I don't want you up until all hours of the night just screening or engaging in it. So
actually, there is a new feature, at least through AT&T, which is my carrier. You can actually, it's called Smart Limits, and you can actually shut off the child's phone. So you can go in as the parent and say, this phone will not function between midnight and 6 a.m., for example. So, modern technology.
Thank goodness for the providers that give us, the parents, that latitude, that opportunity.
Yeah, well, because I think you're right. It is a very difficult issue that is more and more common. And, I guess when you talk with parents, what do you think is the biggest challenge for kids these days?
The challenge for kids these days is, and it's always been, kids need to find a sense of belonging. So when a child is under 8 years old, let's say, that sense of belonging comes almost solely from the family.
Right.
But when they get into third grade, when they get into fourth grade, fifth grade, and then particularly in middle school, that friendship, that need for affiliation, that need to feel like you belong in the world of friendships as well, is paramount, and it's outstanding, in fact, when adolescence comes in.
Okay.
So I just think in a general sense the challenge is to find a comfortable sense of belonging.
I think there's some adults that have that same challenge. It doesn't go away.
Absolutely, it doesn't go away.
Yeah. Well, this is great. We're going to take a little short break.
Surely.
And then we will be right back.
Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. Go to discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Making It Last, where we share ideas to help families tackle major issues. I'm your host, Regina DeMeo, and with me today is Steve Stein, who's been helping families for over 30 years in the mental health profession. Thanks so much for being here, Steve.
Again, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. So we're talking about, technology and kids, and I just shared with you a little story that when I was teaching junior achievement at my son's school, I was really shocked by the amount of information these kids knew about, like, the Boston Marathon and, the shooting at the school in Connecticut. I was trying to get them to talk about news stories, and they all went kind of to the dark side, which was really hard for me to listen. But I guess it's their reality. They're growing up with this reality. So how does a parent talk to a child, especially in a post-9/11 world? How do you talk to them about these random acts of violence?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And so I don't think we start out by supposing. So in other words, I think we start out by asking. So, and so in other words, let's use the Boston Marathon as an example. I was wondering, I'm talking to a 7-year-old, to an 8-year-old, I was wondering if there has been any talk at school about what happened over the weekend in Boston. And so the child says, oh, do you mean the Boston Marathon? And so I say, yeah, that's what I was thinking about. What is your impression? What do you know? So really what I want to do is I want to ask and kind of explore the landscape of what is known. Because what I want to do as the parent is to clarify what is understood and to amplify. Because I have talked to parents who are runners who, after the Boston Marathon, because of the transmittal of the information in some rather haphazard sort of way, kids are great observers, but really poor interpreters. So in other words, it's not atypical for a 7-year-old to fear for his mother's life who's going out to run on Monday morning after the weekend of the Boston Marathon should have been on Sunday. Wow. Mommy, are you going to be okay? Sweetie, I'm gonna be okay. I know you're nervous about what happened yesterday, but I do this run almost every other day. You know that. So what time is it now? What time do I get back? We're gonna be fine.
Interesting.
But I'm hearing he is anxious about violence.
Right.
So really what I want to impress upon him, I can't insulate him, and I want him to know what my job is as a parent. And I think it's principally twofold. I want to protect so that he, she, they survive. But that isn't the end goal, just survival. I want them to thrive. Right. We all want our children to thrive. We want them to be all that they can be, just like the Army commercial suggests.
Right.
And so I want to tell my child, that's my job, to protect you as best as I can and to help you not just survive, but thrive, to be a good citizen, to be a good person, to be a good neighbor, to be a good brother, all of the above. And so that's my commitment. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to do all I can to protect you. Can I protect over everything? Well, you've heard the expression bulletproof. Nobody really is bulletproof, right, unfortunately. So we can't protect over everything. But we just need, that's why I ask you, where are you going to be, who you're going to be with, because that's part of my job of protecting. And so maybe you think that if you were older, you would find my inquiring about that to be a nuisance, and you might even say, why do you need to know? Well, because part of my job is to protect you. It just is. So get used to it. I'll ask you that from now until I'm too old to ask that.
Right. So the other interesting question I got from these kids when I was at my son's school, they asked me if I had any idea why some people do these bad acts. And, you know, I made very clear that I'm a lawyer. I'm not a mental health professional. But my personal opinion is that this stems from anger. It stems from people feeling detached. And like we said earlier, a lack of belonging. So when these people, you know, it's almost like, doesn't matter because they don't feel like they have to be held accountable to anyone. You know, that anger just overwhelms them and they can act out, and it's very unfortunate. How would you explain why?
Well, I think you just did actually very well, in fact, and it does stem, you know, in our language, it stems from alienated people, alienated folks that really don't have a significant sense of belonging, that do have some pent-up, accumulated experience, which tells them in their private logic, let's say, that they've been disregarded and, in fact, disrespected and really dismissed. So in our raising of kids, we just always want them to understand that as important as we know them to be and want them to feel, they're a citizen nevertheless. So if I'm the parent and we're at a playground and I see my 6-year-old not actually in line to go down the slide, he just sort of bullies his way in front of everybody.
Right.
I, as a parent, I can sit back and say, that's my Johnny. I don't know what I'm going to do with him when he's 12 and certainly when he's 18. But that isn't what we want from parents.
Right.
What I would advise, what I would want that parent to do is to get up, run to that slide, ask the kids to get out of the way a minute so that you can grab Johnny, bring him down, and talk to him really right then and there. You are so important, sweetie. So are they. Mm-hmm. Your place was here. It wasn't first. Everybody's here to have the same fun. You're going to get your turn. You have to wait in line. That's what we do, because everybody's important.
Absolutely. So some people, I think, I've noticed, get a little more anxious after these, acts of violence occur, right?
Of course.
And what kind of tips would you have for a parent to calm down that anxiety?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And so when somebody is aware that their anxiety is surging, that's not the best time to convey the value-laden message, in a sense, that you want to convey. So it's just important for the parent to have some insight into that and gain calm. Do some of the things that we referred to a little bit earlier in terms of calming down, whether it's water or deep breathing or meditating or yoga or whatever your calmer is, so that, again, we're talking from this level 3 level of emotionality, so that I'm conveying it in such a way that I'm not exacerbating your anxiety. I'm just being calm, and we're talking about the need of the situation, in a sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
So in other words, if I'm picking you up after school and it's the day following some random act of violence, and if you're not where our agreed upon meeting place is, I'm going to be aroused in my anxiety.
Right.
Because it's an uncertain world out there, and the uncertainty of the world is impacting me. And you, who I hold dearest to my heart, you've got to be where we agreed that you were going to be, because. And somehow, I don't know if he can really understand the importance I place on being exactly where I said the day after the Boston Marathon, because I'm still frazzed from this.
Right.
But what I would like to do as a parent is, I think the most talkable time to get myself understood, to get my value across, is when I literally am at a 3 and my child's at a 2, even a 1. The only time my child is at a 2 or a 1 is shortly before he's going to fall asleep.
Interesting.
So I think that bedtime, when he's reclined and I'm sitting beside him, is the most important window for a parent to convey to the child a value, something that really matters to the child, to the parent rather, such that you can be understood, and it's said like this as he's reclining: "Okay, Mommy, okay, Daddy, I understand. I know how important that is to you, and I promise tomorrow I'm going to be right where we said. I love you, sweetie."
It's so funny that you say that, because I have my favorite talks are at night after we're reading a book and we're just, he'll interject questions. And sometimes he said funny things like, well, not so funny, like, "I hope you never die." We might be reading a book where somebody dies. And it's like, well, I'm going to die. Like, I don't sugarcoat things, and I'm not going to make false promises. So, to me, reassurance is not about saying nothing's going to ever happen to me, right? Because something will happen to me. I can't control whether, the bus breaks down or the train gets derailed, and I don't know.
Right.
Anything. So I just say, look, this is this is why you have to just enjoy each day, and I will do my best to protect you and be here for as long as I can. But I'm building you to be a soldier so that one day when I'm not here, you can fight your own fights. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but...
No, I think it's a very good point. Here's what I would add to your bedtime ritual, and it's a very important ritual that you're establishing. After story time, there's this time to talk, to have this nice exchange. What I always actually advise parents to do, because of the uncertainties in the world, like we were talking about, and it's apparent random acts of violence to us, I also want to find the goodness in a day. So, sweetie, before you fall asleep, let me ask you to just think back about today. Pick the very best, pick something that, what was one of the best things about today? Think about it for a minute. So whatever the child says, it's going to be age appropriate. Well, it was really cool when, or I really liked it when, I got called upon and I did my report and the teacher said this and thus and so. So it's just a recording. We're finishing the day on the good side of life instead of the dark side or the negative side. What a night. I'm so glad that happened to you today. I'm so glad that you felt good from it. Sweet dreams, pleasant dreams.
That's really good advice, because, a lot of bad things will happen throughout the day, but at the end, even as an adult, I'll journal and I will try and think of at least 3 positive things.
That's wonderful.
And it's a good way, because, no matter what happens,
right.
All right, I'll go to sleep remembering those 3 good things. And if you teach a child to do that, that's a really good coping mechanism for the rest of their life.
It's strengthening.
Yeah.
Some parents understand the importance of doing that, but in so doing, it's ill-timed. Because what they'll do, what I've heard some parents do is, all right, let's go around the dinner table and everybody say something about something good that happened today.
Right.
And so then the smart-ass 12-year-old, excuse the expression, is going to say, well, I'm still breathing.
Right.
And it's just so non-productive.
Right.
Right? And then the parent just gets upset because it's not being taken seriously. But the parent is not aware of the golden moment. The golden moment is before sleep.
That's perfect.
And we're alone. That really is the golden moment to have a real meaningful exchange about stuff that really means something to you. And if your child were to say to you like he did, you're not going to die, are you, Mommy? Well, someday, but I'm going to do my really very best because I want to be at your wedding.
Right.
I want your kids to know me. You're not getting rid of me so soon. Not if I have anything to do with it at all.
This has been great, Steve. If somebody wanted to contact you for further information, how would they do that?
Well, my phone here in Montgomery County, my practice is on Rockville Pike, a little bit north of White Flint Mall, and I'm 301-468-1835.
Great. Thanks so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week on Making It Last.